Slasher is back, this time in Northern California. You're thinking, I don't believe you. You've got to prove that you're in California. Is the sunshine not enough? Okay, fine, I'll give you proof. You want to see a palm tree? Very carefully. There it is. All right. Now that I've proven I'm truly in Northern California, incognito, because of my sudden urge and fame, which a lot of you are having trouble dealing with. How could a man with this little hair have this much fame? Well, it's a personal struggle. Here we go. What is this all about today? It's about a comment left on one of my videos because, oh, I'm so personal with everyone. Top secret entry. And by the way, with me being the daddy blogger that I am, a lot of you forget that I get sent free cars for a week at a time with a full tank of gas. There's a 2018 Mazda 3 that I'll be driving. All you have to do is go to my blog, Family Friendly Daddy Blog, and you'll eventually see all the adventures that I go on with my family in that car this week, and then they'll send me another one next week. So let's get to business. I made a video called Congrats to my newest hair loss program graduate, Sylvan Strength. And this was a comment that I received, and I think it's worth us learning from as a group, because remember, we're all in different stages on our hair loss journey. I'm at the very end. I've graduated like Sylvan Strength has, where I'm here to now help people, which insecure people will then say, why are you so obsessed, man? And then I turn into Pee Wee Herman and say, I know you, what am I? So here's the comment from Email Brink. Quote, I've noticed two different kinds of approaches to hair loss. Some are like you and try to twist it psychologically. He later went on to clarify that he meant as a coping mechanism, which I've made a video about that already, where it doesn't bother them anymore. Some take the route of saying, okay, this is a problem, how can I fix it? And prior to this crossroads of initial panic, not knowing what to do, I'm a graphic designer, and I want to make a chart incorporating the stages of grief as well, laying out the different paths people take. Maybe some could use that as guidance as to how they want to deal with their hair loss. End quote. All right, so let's talk about this. Let's check this out. I want to dissect this comment because keep it in mind that every time you meet a new person and you interact with them, it's an opportunity to learn more about yourself. And every time you hear what they have to say, you're often filtering through your own personal perspective on life, and that can get in the way of truth and knowledge. Okay? So the first thing I want to say is, it's a matter of me even asking, can this even be done from a personal point of view? Because based on where you are on the hair loss grief stage, you know, again, all the insecure subscribers assume naturally that I'm the one obsessed with hair loss, not themselves, you know. But could this be done? Because let's talk about American politics for a moment. You know, for a guy like me who's a neutral libertarian who doesn't care about the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, I have zero interest. I don't think one is better than the other. I think to choose a side and choose a puppet, you've already lost. I say think freely, right? So, but it's so easy to get caught up in your own beliefs, whether it's politics or whether it's about hair loss, that it's hard to see where the other side is coming from. So it's hard because most people, if you're watching my videos about hair loss and you're subscribing, watching my videos, you're in a situation where you're probably somewhere dealing with the struggle of hair loss. You haven't got to where I've gotten. So it's going to be hard to imagine, I'm going back to the comment here, when it said that there's that, and let me quote because I want to get this right. It says, and prior to this is the crossroads of initial panic and not knowing what to do. Okay? I want to address that though. And by the way, further proof that I'm in Northern California would be palm trees, right? Right there, right there. There you go. Palm trees. Proof that I'm in Northern California. And also the sort of Spanish style houses that you don't typically see when I'm in Tennessee, when I'm the king of corporate, or there's all the hills and humidity of Tennessee compared to Northern California. So let's talk about that. Let's say, ask me, if I have gone through an initial crossroads, let's get it right, the crossroads of initial panic. See, here's the thing about me, and I mean this. I've never experienced panic over hair loss. I never have. I've been very honest with you in telling you that if I spent any time worrying about something I couldn't control based on my genes, my genetics, and that was in my late teens and my early 20s, I was really worried and obsessed over the fact that I stopped growing at 5'9". I wanted to be closer to 6 foot tall. That was a big deal to me. And if anything bothered my self-esteem based on something I couldn't control, based on genetics, it was that. That coincided with the whole hair loss thing, but if you've watched the video that I made explaining my initial reaction to realizing that I had a receding hairline, you knew that it was something I always expected. I always knew that based on the men in my family, odds were in my favor. I would never be completely bald, but I would be balding by the time I got to my 30s. So the fact that I could be 37 and still have this much hair, it's already exceeded my expectations. It already exceeded my expectations at 30 when I had as much hair as I did. So it's already assuming that because you're talking about hair loss, that you already have experienced a state of panic. I never had a state of panic because my expectations were already in order. And I think that's important to point out. All right. So I also want to basically bring this up too. The main difference, basically, what I'm understanding here is that, and based on the comment, is that some people have more psychological control than others. And I've talked about that before. Some people will never get over hair loss. Some people will require Rogaine. They will require a hair transplant to deal with it. And even then, there's probably still going to be insecurity. Why is it that people like me and others like Sylvan Strength and others that have graduated my program, why is it that they are able to basically flip this switch and face their fears and deal with it? See, ultimately, this comment proves what I'm saying all along. And that is, everyone could choose what it takes to psychologically overcome it. But some will never be able to do that because of their own limitations. And as I've stated before, sometimes not so popularly, is what does it come down to me, if you ask me, and I've got a video that I'm going to soon be publishing about this soon, but it comes down to what some are calling pseudoscience. Of course, our good friend, Sylvan Strength, says, quote, "I don't consider you a pseudoscientist because you don't make any solid claims," end quote. And I definitely agree that I do not make solid claims. If anything, I keep everything ambiguous when it comes to me talking about how men who are more emotionally affected by others, men who didn't have a positive male role model such as their father in their life, and men who are addicted to pornography are more likely to be bothered by hair loss than those like me who choose to flip off the breaker switch when it comes to emotions and not let other people bother me by what they say. I did have a very positive father figure in my life, which happens to be my biological father, and I've never looked at pornography. So that already sets me apart. And some will say, well, that's pseudoscience. I'm not saying it's a fact. I'm saying I'm noticing a trend here based on people who subscribe and leave comments that they seem to have a background in those things as compared to me is different. So going back to what this comment proves, that ultimately the difference between somebody like me and the difference between so many people who are at the beginning of their hair loss journey is that, is it a choice or is it ultimately this background that you have to overcome, right? Are we just going to say, well, we're just born that way? Some of us dealing with hair loss will never be able to deal with it, and some were. I say no. I say you're not born that way. I say it's a decision that you get to overcome, like this guy right here, the corporate thrasher. So, thank you for leaving that comment. Ultimately, it's psychological warfare is what it is. Okay, but ultimately I say it's a personal responsibility, a personal decision when we come down to these two different kinds of approaches to hair loss. And again, quote, "Some are like you and try to twist it psychologically or have a coping mechanism to a point where it doesn't bother you anymore." Okay? So ultimately, I call that a decision. But I think it is very true that we've got two groups of people watching these videos. Those who are like me in Sylvan Strength, who twist it or cope with it and convince themselves, like the Amy Schumer of hair loss, that it doesn't matter. And guess what? It doesn't matter if that's what you believe. But as long as you believe it matters, it matters. What do you think about this? That ultimately, some people will always believe that they can never psychologically overcome it, and they're right. While the rest of us believe that you can overcome it psychologically, and guess what? We do. What are your thoughts on that? Whose side are you on?